Kia ora everyone. Just give people a few minutes to jump in while I try and sort the live stream out on Facebook. Hopefully you'll be able to find, I can see people are starting to come into the room. Hopefully you'll be able to find the chat box without too many issues, and let me know when you're all there. Jamie's in, excellent. If you want to drop a comment, say where you're tuning in from and from what business, so we can get to know each other. And I'll just get the live stream all started on Facebook as well, and give people a couple of minutes to join. Oh, we've got Frank here from Hybrid Bikes. Good to see you, Frank. Stuart Bean. Good to see you, Beanie. Karina. Thanks for joining, Karina. Awesome. From Karina Vincent Photography. Tash Columbus coming in from Dunedin, Woman Fitness Studio. Awesome. Team Tash. Hey, Wendy. Good to see you again. Brocky's on board. Excellent. Hey, Brocky. Joss from Joss Rosendale Landscapes, Kylie Jones from Golden Bay Hideaway. I've been very envious of your lockdown situation, Kylie. What a great place. We were there just before lockdown, in fact, as you know, Tiny Greenie. Kia ora, Paul. Good to see you from Wakatu Incorporation. Kim from Forest Herbs Research. Kia ora. As you can see, my face is a little bit off because I'm choosing an extraordinary Nelson Tasman background today. So if you want one of these, by the way, for your Zoom calls, for those of you who are doing lots of Zoomies at the moment, then jump on the nelsontasman.nz site, because the team at NRDA are putting together all sorts of backgrounds to help us celebrate Nelson Tasman while we can't have people joining from elsewhere. We've got Raw and Rebecca, also jealous of your isolation and the sounds. Looks like it's been awesome. I'm sure you're looking forward to getting back as well, though. Right, I'm going to start sharing my screen because I can tell it's working for people. Just a heads up that I'll only be monitoring the Zoom link here, so I won't be looking at the Facebook page, but we are live on Facebook as well for anyone joining. So if you are on the Facebook group, I've also included the Zoom link. You can go ahead and register and join the Zoom call where you'll be able to chat directly to me. If you leave your comments on Facebook, then we'll get to them another time. I'll go in afterwards for sure. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen here. Cool. If everyone just wants to let me know and confirm that they can see my screen there as well. Excellent. Awesome. Hi, Kim. Oh, it's great to see so many people joining. Awesome. All right, look, I'm going to get underway. I'm sure more people will still be coming through, both on the Facebook group and here on Zoom. But first of all, I'd just like to thank you for taking the time out on this rainy Thursday afternoon to join me for the Shift Happens webinar. This is basically just an attempt, as you've seen over the past few weeks, as things have rapidly progressed. I know the pace for people in business over the past few weeks has been fairly relentless as the curtain came down on the COVID-19 lockdown here in Aotearoa. And I know that lots of you are facing very uncertain and difficult times. And so for us here at Shift On, and for me personally, that was to respond to that call as best we could and as fast as we could. We set up the Shift Happens Facebook group, which has been absolutely awesome. I really appreciate everyone's attendance and participation and contributions there. We've conducted a number of interviews that I've found really valuable, and I hope you've found valuable as well, all around this topic of how to survive and thrive in COVID-19 and these really uncertain and unprecedented times to be in business. Today is an attempt to consolidate a lot of what we've talked about and that information through various different interviews. It's an attempt to kind of distill that down into a session where we might be able to actually walk you through more practically and with a bit more structure how to survive and thrive during this time in your business. So the first thing to recognize is that we've got businesses of all different shapes and sizes on the call today. So I'm trying to make the information as universal as possible. Obviously, that means we've got freelancers and solo entrepreneurs and people running their own businesses through to larger organizations that employ hundreds and in some cases thousands of people. So this is my attempt to look at what's the universal language for business continuity and success right now and what's happening out there in the landscape. But please, if you've got specific questions, then just drop them down into the chat. And as we go through, I'll address as many of your questions as possible, and I'll check back in at the end to make sure you've got time for Q&A. The other thing I want you to consider as we go through this webinar is this is kind of my best attempt at the moment to respond directly to the questions and concerns and I guess areas of strategic guidance that people have been reaching out to me for over this time. And some of it is new information as a result of COVID-19, and some of it is existing information and advice we had that's been, I guess, refocused with the new lens we now have on the world as things have changed so rapidly. And so I'm keen to hear further input around other things you'd like to talk about as well as we move through, specific questions you may have, areas of focus. If I can't answer it, I guarantee there's probably someone in my network who can. And so my job at the moment is to curate as much information as possible because I know we're all swimming in information and updates and changes at the moment. And so I really want to make it as simple, as accessible and digestible as possible to take that information on board. So the first thing, if I bring up my slides here, is I've covered that. So just a brief reminder about what support we have available. But the first thing I want to check in with you on is how everyone's actually feeling. So today I did my second session, and some of you were on that call, my second session with the visitor sector here in Nelson, Tasman. We had really high participation today in the conversation about how everyone's going. And I think it was really useful, a really useful place to start, just to actually assess right now with the way things have gone over the past month, and for many of us the past couple of months, as business started to be disrupted by COVID-19. Some as early back as January, in fact, for those of you in the export markets as well and travel. Just a moment to take stock and recognize where you are currently at. Because one thing that I've recognized throughout this whole process is that, of course, we're going through these kind of stages of grief, if you like. And it's because we're entering unprecedented and uncertain times, and we all recognize and accept that things won't be the same again. So even if we have some confidence and optimism about the rebound and the way things are going to progress, I think we all openly recognize that going back to business as usual or going back to the way things were is not a realistic target. And so with that, in our own lives, in our communities, and in our businesses in particular, it comes with it some grief, and some grief that at times I think we're all tempted to deny if we were happy with the status quo, and also at times that we feel very excited about. And I know, and I want to recognize that those two things can coexist at the moment. So the uncertainty about the future is a big deal, and that creates real fear. The fear that comes up for people, I find, is typically things that are going to hurt them or affect them very fast. So the restaurants that had to close their doors, the tourism operators that recognize when the borders closed that their business had come to a grinding halt. Those types of businesses where there's an immediate fear of, can I actually survive this? Do I have the cash reserves? Is there a future in my industry? Is there a future in my line of business? That's the real fear. And then there's anxiety, which is looking a little bit further forward and going, there's uncertainty here and I'm not sure how I'm going to survive. And I'm not sure what this means for my business yet. And I'm not sure when I'm going to be able to be operational. When can I offer my products and services? For a lot of businesses right now, it's what does level 2 look like, and what is that impact of that? We're moving into level 3 next week. Those guidelines are clear, but I think for a lot of businesses, they're still navigating that uncertainty, and things are constantly changing. So within all of that, it's an important place to start to just recognize that the most important thing for your business right now is to take care of yourself. And I say that in such a way that I'm telling myself as much as I'm talking to the rest of you, because I think we're all guilty of this. As business owners, we're used to being active, we're used to taking action, we want to fix things, we want to solve things, we're in leadership positions, we want to make everything right again. And it's important that we recognize that whilst the impacts on our collective businesses, and there's a real spectrum here, of course, but whilst the impact is significant, that COVID-19 is not a problem of your doing. And so as many of you, you've got your family's livelihoods hanging over you, so your ability to pay the rent or pay the mortgage and provide for your family, which is no small deal. And for a lot of you, you've also got your employees and your teams to worry about as well, let alone your suppliers and contractors. And so I know that the pressure of this can be overwhelming for people, and I know that in moments that will feel very real and very intense. And so I wanted to start on the message that taking a moment to take stock and actually audit where you are at personally, check in with yourself about whether this is the right time to be doing the things I'm talking about. Because as we go through this webinar, I'm going to have practical suggestions for you on how to take radical action in your business to make it better on the other side. But with that comes some recognition that being, I resonate with the quote that says, you're not working from home at the moment. You're at home in a crisis trying to work. And I think we all need to start from that foundation because it eases some of the pressure we're putting on ourselves to turn things around. I know when the lockdown was announced, I started to get very excited. We've got a newborn baby here. It meant more time with her. My mother moved in as well, which meant more time with family in our immediate bubble. I know that I was keen to do more exercise and learn new skills, and I wanted to enhance my te reo Māori, and there were all these sorts of things, as well as stepping up our efforts and doing a whole lot of voluntary support for businesses and networks around the region who need it right now, plus serving our existing clients, plus building our business, plus sorting out our systems and reinvesting in our brand, and all of these things that I completely overloaded myself early into the lockdown without recognizing that the global impact and the collective impact of what we're going through will have moments of fatigue and fear and uncertainty where it's not the most productive space. So let me encourage you all as a starting point to actually assess as you go through this webinar when the right time for you to act is, or whether it's the right time for you to rest. Because for some people in business, the best thing they can do right now is take some time off because it's unusual to be sent home and given that opportunity. So do all the learning and soak up all the knowledge you need to. Maybe these strategies are useful for you tonight because you're sitting at home and you're ready to take action, and action is the antidote to that fear and uncertainty anyway. But maybe it's next week, and maybe it's next month, and maybe these tips and tricks that I can give you over this period also don't need to kick into gear until well after this lockdown period. So I'll leave that one with you, but I wanted to just take that moment there first. The next thing as we move forward is just to recognize the impact that language has on all of us as we work through this crisis. So I need to constantly remind myself that all language is hypnotic. And one of the things that started to happen at the beginning of this crisis, well before lockdown kicked into gear, is I noticed a tendency for businesses and people in the community to start talking themselves into problems that didn't yet exist. So you've got to be very aware of the impact that language has on your behavior. So I know for sure that for a lot of businesses, the economic recession that we are facing and the impacts of things like border restrictions, or at the moment closed borders, are very real and will likely have a big, if not in some cases fatal, impact on the success of their business. But we have to be really careful that we're only in our language and in our self-talk, but particularly when we're talking to our team and to the rest of our community, that we're being very aware of how we're framing things. Because I've noticed even recently in the media in particular talk of things like tourism being dead. Tourism is definitely not dead. Tourism is in hibernation at the moment, but that sector in particular has a really proven ability to recover and bounce back stronger than people expect through other global crises. And so I just want to acknowledge that in our position where you have influence over your team and over your community, that we're a little bit more conscious about the language you're using, because I think at this time talking ourselves into doom and gloom, or constantly focusing on the worst case scenarios economically and socially and from the perspective of our businesses, runs the risk of becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy where we talk ourselves into a recession. Recessions, we're facing an immediate recession, but the future of our economy and the future of our country in this space depends entirely on people's confidence to invest, do business, and spend money. And so it's very important that collectively in your businesses and in your communities, but in your sectors as well, that we do our best to double down and provide optimism and hope right now for the business community, so that we can build confidence. And when we build confidence, then investment and participation in that economy follows. And so, think about your contribution, think about your language and what you're bringing to the table here, and for yourself and for those around you as well. One of the most obvious things there is around this whole unprecedented times. So I think this is really common at the moment to tell ourselves that these are unprecedented times and that we don't know what to do. But of course, disruption isn't new to businesses, and I think there are a number of global crises coming on stream, such as climate change and the loss of massive habitat and biodiversity loss, that are equally, if not more severe in the long run at least, going to be impactful on our businesses and fundamentally change the way we live and do business as well. So we are living in a time of significant disruption. that is not unprecedented. The circumstances have changed. In our lifetimes, we've never faced a pandemic of this kind. We've never faced an event at this pace where it really brings the global economy to its knees and stops things like that we're used to, like international travel and trade. But disruption in your business is not unprecedented. And what's unique, I think, about this, and one of the opportunities we have that we should take forward from this, is that I think the types of conversations we're having at the moment in terms of how we are emotionally and how our businesses are a lot more honest than they used to be. I know from working directly with business owners that most business owners go through challenging times on a regular basis, and all sorts of personal and business circumstances force people to close at different times, force major impacts on businesses. And most of that time as business owners, we're required to absorb that ourselves and deal with it ourselves. And we don't often get the opportunity to share and talk about it in the way that COVID-19 has allowed us to. So on some level, whilst the impacts have been so fast and the pace has been so relentless lately in terms of the level of disruption, and the problems are real, this is people's livelihoods, it's their businesses, it's things they've built up. There is a silver lining here and the opportunity to reset our business culture, I think, here in Aotearoa, which is around the ability to discuss these things and to recognise that whilst these are disruptive times, there are new opportunities emerging, there is new creativity surfacing, and we have an unprecedented opportunity to really have another look at the way we've been doing things, both as individuals, as businesses, but also wider than that in our country as well. I heard the analogy last night on a session I was participating in that, what we've been doing economically in New Zealand and around the world is we've been riding a bike and trying to replace the tyre. So we recognise that there are huge flaws in our economy, that the trajectory we were on in terms of our environmental and social impact of our economic activity had some huge challenges ahead in terms of some of the issues that I've talked about. But we've been riding along at pace where there's momentum and growth, and we've been trying to change the tire, which is really hard. And for the first time in our lifetimes, the bike has stopped, and our economy, aside from essential services, has largely come to a grinding halt, and so much activity has stopped temporarily. And I guess thinking big picture here for what this means for New Zealand, but also what it means for your business, is it's very rare once you start a business. And I know some of you on this call have been in business 20 or 30 plus years, and sometimes for a lot of you in the same business. And so I just want to take a moment to reflect on the significance of the fact that the bike has stopped for a lot of you, and you have this unprecedented opportunity rather than unprecedented challenge or problem. You have this to actually look at the bike and turn it over and go, what sort of fine tuning do I want to do here? Am I actually happy with the look and feel of this bike? Do I want to replace the tire? Is it time for some new parts? Do I want a new bike completely? Which will be some of the conversations that you'll be having at the moment, no doubt, if you're in a really affected business. And so do take some calm from the fact that it's a time to look at the bike. It's an unprecedented opportunity to reassess where you're at as your business and give your business a really good service. And that's one of the things that I'll focus on in our conversation today, is what that might look like for you in terms of taking action while you're not operational. Because the opportunities to strengthen your business foundation right now have likely never been greater. Because doing it operationally, doing it when you're up against it, doing it when you're competing week to week and you're out there hustling and trying to make it work and your time's already stretched, is incredibly challenging. But doing it with a fresh lens and recognizing that the world has changed and our economy has changed, and that for the most part, unless you're participating in one of those essential businesses, you've been sent home to reassess at the moment and rethink, is a really, really good opportunity. So I thought I'd choose a hipster there to go through and look at the bike for the photo. And Paul's saying Frank looks way younger. That'll be Frank from Hybrid Bikes. Cheers, Brocky. So let's take a look at what the fuck is actually happening out there. And let's really take a good, clear look at the situation. My insights here are limited. I'm happy to hear yours as well. But I thought we'd briefly have a look at some of the things that I've observed that are happening in the business space. The first one is that there is a significant increase in time being spent on social media. So before the COVID-19 lockdown kicked in, I think we all spend a fairly good chunk of our days attached to or engaged in social media. These devices, having phones with us all the time and access to social media platforms has meant that our ability to quickly check Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and all of those platforms has grown and grown and grown over the years in such a way that most of us, from the moment we get up to the moment we go to bed, are connected in some form to social media. Yet, since the COVID-19 lockdown has taken place, there's been, in most cases, a 61% increase in social media use. So people are going to social media for their news sources at the moment. They're going there for inspiration. They're going there to hear what's happening, and they're going there to connect with family and friends, because at a time where you can't go out and have all the normal social interactions that you're used to, then social media provides that forum. So if your business at the moment is in hibernation, then it's worth considering whether your social media should be. And I'll talk a bit about that shortly. The second thing is that there's been a rapid shift into the online space for people who were previously hesitant. And that is for both consumers and businesses. So I know, for example, I was talking to a friend yesterday, or day before, sorry, and the conversation was recorded. It was with Rachel Claver, and she was saying her parents, have always resisted online shopping and never wanted to put their credit card online and never wanted to use a computer because they could just go to the local shop. But since the lockdown started, they have done all of their shopping online direct to the producer, and they have been able to completely eliminate the supermarket from their day-to-day lives. So we're seeing consumers becoming, almost through a lack of other options, we're seeing a rapid shift into the online space for people who were previously uncomfortable. And we're seeing a rapid shift on the business end, where businesses who were previously not interested or didn't have the time or didn't prioritize the investment to get online, are now having to very quickly. And I think it goes without saying that if you'd put in the work beforehand and you had actually had good online systems in place, then both stopping your operations in terms of informing your customers that you were closing for this period, and also restarting some form of operations online during this time, or on the other end of the lockdown, is much easier when you have good online channels and the ability to reach people very quickly. I know for the businesses that I work with, those who had good CRMs or email lists in place and good social media channels, the ability for them to get communications fast to their customer was much stronger than those who didn't. And those who didn't were scrambling, and it was more time consuming and put more pressure on staff. So we are seeing a lot move online, and that includes, of course, meetings and workshops and events like the one that you're participating in right now. And so I want to recognize that, because ultimately there are a number of things here where I don't think we'll go back. So I was chatting to a restaurant the other day, and their revenue's obviously gone from being reasonably healthy to zero overnight, and they've been asked to close in level 4. And we were discussing getting them back online for level 3 in terms of deliveries. And what we realized is that we wanted to pivot away from just delivering hot food and takeaways, which is what a lot of the restaurants will choose to do, and find solutions where people can enjoy the particular taste or style of that restaurant at home themselves and have a hand in it. And so we kind of talked through all the product options there and explored what that might look like. And throughout the course of the conversation, we designed an entirely new business that we realized was much bigger than this town. And we realized it could be shipped all around the country, and that actually, if they set up in this way, they could operate in level 3 quite successfully. And actually, it was one of those aha moments where we both realized that the trajectory they were on as a restaurant was, while strong, wasn't really enough for them anyway, and wasn't very sustainable, and involved a huge amount of input from the particular owner operator. And so one of the outcomes of that conversation is this new business that we're starting as a result of the pressures that have come down due to COVID-19, and they were not pleasant. Shutting the doors on your restaurant and not knowing if you can reopen is far from a pleasant experience. And having to deal with staff who are like family to you, and tell them that you no longer have employment for them is really serious and impactful. But it's only been a month since that really happened, and already the jolt of that has forced us into a different space where we're now considering opportunities that, in all honesty, are likely to, at my best guess, are likely to produce more revenue and more financial sustainability and security for this particular family moving forward than a restaurant would have. So there's always kind of interesting things happening when you move into the online space. I know that for me personally, one of the things I became concerned about really early in the piece was all the money in circulation going to supermarkets during this lockdown period, which seemed like a very bad outcome. So I've made a conscious effort to reach out to local producers who are selling online and those who are moving online so I can buy my products direct. So I'm now putting in more effort as a consumer to do things like buy Cornwall wine online rather than through the supermarket as I previously did. And that is a really positive change. And that might be just one of those things that we choose not to go back on. If our food producers have great direct access and offer a kind of seamless digital experience, then we may decide that we prefer that. And as the lockdown restrictions are lifted, it may just be one of those things that we decide to maintain. So I'm excited about this shift into the online space because I know for me personally, whilst it's as an extrovert and someone who likes to be social, it's been challenging not being out and about as usual. But in the same breath, some of the travel that I used to do to places like Wellington and Auckland for meetings and things, I've actually found operating off Zoom much more effective. And on some of the webinars and events that we've been running, where we would have previously, with sector groups in particular, we would previously run them in person and they'd have to travel to one location and get everyone together, and there were significant costs involved, and there was people had to arrive early and leave late and all of those things. We're actually finding our attendance and participation has increased because people can sit at home comfortably and participate, and it's a much more efficient use of their time. So I can see a number of trends evolving that we may well choose to continue, and I think it's important from an observational point of view in your business to recognize right now what are the things people are likely to want to keep out of this crisis, and how can I position myself competitively to participate and benefit from that. The third thing is a focus on entertainment as a form of distraction. So any of those digital entertainment businesses at the moment would be a great place to be. I know that the people have gone home and obviously are now looking for their entertainment in the comfort of their own home, which was not something that was as strong as before. And so thinking about that with your business, even if your business is not in the entertainment industry, thinking about the fact that people are looking for some light-hearted content at the moment, and that humor has been an extremely useful tool to help people cope with these unprecedented and stressful times, and think about what role does my business have in providing that, and how can I bring that to the forefront. Of course, our attention has become focused on much more essential needs, and we need to be aware of this because that may be something that takes a while to recover. So whilst there will be an opportunity, no doubt. Looks like our elimination strategy in New Zealand is going to be very successful. But our consumer behaviour and attention has focused on the bare essentials, and the fragility of our economy has been reinforced with people. And what that means is, in good times, people spend a lot of money on the luxuries, and they feel confident doing so because things are moving along as normal. When you have a shock of this to this extent, then people's willingness to spend afterwards is not necessarily that high because they understand how fickle things can be. And so their confidence to spend their cash reserves or use their disposable income for those who have it will be limited through this. And so you've got a job to do if you're in that industry of how to carry people through that and actually get people more focused on things that they'd like, creating demand and attention for your product. The fifth thing is that greater attention and significance is being paid to what our new normal looks like. And much like the bike analogy I used before, obviously our whole country is experiencing this right now. And so we need to think about in that redesign in terms of things like sustainability and inequality and things like that, what the potential impacts of us having a greater and more intense conversation about that right now will be. For me, some obvious examples have been that I have found going to the supermarket a really interesting experience because having saved hundreds of dollars a week by not going to restaurants and bars and cafes, I'm finding our supermarket, that we're indulging in our supermarket shop more than we used to. And I feel a sense at the checkout that inequality is more visible because there is some level of guilt associated with the fact that it's hard times and that we're overspending on our supermarket shop. And I've held conversations with the checkout operators about that. One of the ones that was early in the piece was that checkout operator was terrified that their minimum wage increase wouldn't come through as a result of COVID-19. And I think the fact that our supermarket workers right now are essential workers is increasing the visibility of our recognition of those types of workers, and they are some of the things that we will need to contend with throughout this crisis and on the other side of it. And it's likely there will be some massive changes from that. Jacinda Ardern clearly signalled the other day in her press conference that if there was ever a time to close the gap, it's now. James Shaw, from his position as Climate Change Minister, has signalled that the reshaping of the economy is likely to revolve largely around the sustainable transition, which makes sense. So we need to think about what it means for our business where you're operating, and depending on your position in those changes, what that might look like, because we've got an opportunity to co-design and shape that together. I believe one of the really positive things that will come out of this is a stronger emphasis on buying local and supporting New Zealand-made businesses. So again, it's a good time to start looking at your supply chains, recognising that things are a bit more fragile outside of New Zealand at the moment, and that we have a new opportunity to reconsider things like New Zealand manufacturing and keeping more New Zealand product on shore, but also a shift in consumer behaviour, because once we come out of this lockdown, and even during for things like essential services, people's willingness and attention on supporting New Zealand businesses will be really strong, particularly in struggling industries. So we're prior, say, in the visitor sector. And the visitor sector, domestic tourism was large. It was $30 billion in New Zealand. Domestic tourism wasn't small, but it largely wasn't funneling in the direction of things like activity operators. Whereas on the other side of this, there will be a greater emphasis on supporting the likes of activity operators, because we recognise that we all have a big role to play in rebuilding the economy. And the last thing that I don't know if many people have thought about, but certainly I've had some good conversations with one-on-one with particular businesses who are well positioned for this. But if you've got the cash reserves, or you've got investment behind you, or your business is not actually struggling through this time, and you have the ability to invest right now, then there's probably never been a better time to attract the best talent. And when I think of that, I immediately think globally, because I know that with the way some economies and countries around the world have dealt with COVID-19, that New Zealand's position in all of that has been elevated. Our ability to be one of the few countries in the world to actually eliminate that virus, which is our goal, of course, to eliminate the virus and be a safe haven that's isolated from the rest of the world, is likely to strengthen our position in terms of the attractiveness of our country from a visitation perspective, but also from an immigration perspective. And that presents us some interesting opportunities. So locally, right now, businesses are having to let go of talent, and so if you're in business and you've got confidence about the future, or you have the cash to invest, or you're pursuing growth right now, which I know several businesses who are, then start thinking about the opportunity to reset a bit and look at bringing new talent through the door that would have otherwise been hard to attract. Because prior to COVID-19, the talent war was real, and it was hard to get good staff. And one of the biggest battles I know, particularly in industries like hospitality and tourism and retail, one of the biggest battles people had is the quality of the labour available and the ability to attract and retain staff. The landscape has shifted on that. There are a lot of people now out of work, and a lot of people seeking out new opportunities and security and stability in an uncertain environment. And so if you're a business that's in a position to take advantage of that, then start thinking about your talent strategy. And if you're one of the bigger players in town in whatever your industry is, then obviously it's time to start thinking about acquisitions as well, because in every industry that's affected by COVID-19, not everyone will make it. And so whether that's construction or trades or hospitality or tourism, if you have the investment and the ability to act on this, then consider the fact that over the coming months, many businesses will have to close their doors, and there are brands and reputations and teams of people and operations ready to go that you might be able to acquire through that time as well. So recognizing that hiring and acquiring new businesses right now is probably not the focus for a lot of people. But if you are in that position, then I consider I encourage you to really think about what your strategy might be there, because it's an opportunity to come back a lot stronger than you were before. Also, just flagging some of the things that I see happening in the economic space. So I've been lucky enough so far to be fairly directly involved in some of the government responses. So working closely with the food and fibre sector of New Zealand in terms of what the response looks like from COVID-19 for them and their strategy moving forward, but also regionally here in Nelson, Tasman, in terms of Project Core Kitty, which is the regional response to the government economic stimulus and support, and also involvement in initiatives like the Te Tauihu Intergenerational Strategy, which is the council's iwi business and education community of the top of the south that wrote an intergenerational strategy which was completed earlier this year and are now in the process of reshaping that to reflect the way our world has changed as a result of COVID-19. So I feel like I've been fairly close to the front line on some of the government initiatives that are coming on stream. So I thought I'd quickly run through those. The first one is that there's obviously been large government intervention in the survival mode of the economy. You'll notice down the bottom of the screen there that I have 3 phases. This is kind of the official government and local language around how we're designing the economic strategy moving forward. The first phase, looking at survival, is really about how does the government get cash in circulation as quickly as possible to make sure that the economy doesn't completely tank and that we can secure as many jobs and businesses as possible. Grant Robertson has flagged that those businesses that will be the focus of this are those who are vulnerable but viable. And I think it was really interesting language, because what it said was there are businesses who are on the brink who we might not be able to save, and jobs that are on the brink that we probably can't save. But if your business is vulnerable through this, then expect to see more support coming on the stream from the government as long as you're in a position to operate moving forward. So that survival mode obviously was the wage subsidy, which I know many of you will have had to access through this time. There is likely to be an extension to that wage subsidy. The criteria and conditions may change over time, but certainly the government has flagged there is likely to be an extension. And so that survival mode I really consider up until the end of the year. Whilst our economic activity is challenged, whilst many parts of the world are still under lockdown, and certainly whilst our borders are still closed, the survival mode that the government will be acting in will be significant. I note that Grant Robertson has said this morning that they are looking at cash injections, so the economic strategy of actually just putting cash in the hands of everyone to get the economy going again. So there's all sorts of things being considered that will affect the way you operate in business in terms of cash being available, and expect more and more support to come on stream for the businesses. One thing I've noticed just quickly is that a lot of businesses aren't aware of the tax changes. There have been a number of initiatives, and I'm looking to do an interview in the next week on this, but a number of new initiatives coming on stream from the government around tax. One of the most notable is that if you made a profit last year and you're facing a loss this year, then you can offset that loss against the profit you made last year and either get a refund on your tax or not have to pay it if you hadn't already. So there's some quite good economic stimulus coming on board, and more support as the government gets its head around the best way to keep the economy moving forward. And we're in a fairly strong position fiscally in New Zealand, so we can expect more of that support to be coming on stream shortly. The second phase of that, the restart and recovery, will involve the government being the biggest hand in the way our economy works, which is that the level of government stimulus through public spending will be greater than most of us have ever experienced. I know already, they're talking about tens of billions of dollars worth of infrastructure projects, and that locally the councils and our leadership has organised themselves around what they see as the shovel-ready projects that the region should be pushing forward. And so one of the things you want to consider as a business is, how can I position myself to be at the benefit of that government intervention? So if you have an economic stimulus project that you think would be worthy of government support, then now's the time to be considering how you might participate in that strategy. So one of the things that's happening locally is the project I referenced before is Project Core Kitty. So that is the NRDA and Chamber led, with the councils and the likes of MB and MSD involved. And so they are looking at what are the shovel-ready projects for the region, which they have submitted to government, but also right across the spectrum, what are the kind of quick wins and low-hanging fruit as well that might be available for businesses who can be a part of and participate in the restart and recovery. And as I learn and observe more about that, then I'll be sharing it on the Facebook group as well. But thinking about some obvious wins, so retrofitting of houses, construction, property developments, food and fibre, these sectors that the government can see as safe bets right now are likely to be at the heart of the economic stimulus that's going to be created in the restart and recovery. Restart and recovery, you should be thinking the next kind of 12 to 24 months, and then that third phase being around rebound is recognising that our economy has changed and the impacts will be long lasting. The impacts will take a generation, and so what's the new economic activity that we're going to generate as a result of this, and how can you be a part of that? There will be a complete rethink of critical sectors such as tourism and international education. So the tourism conversation has already kicked off. The bike is well and truly upside down for the tourism industry right now. And the structures of the way tourism is managed and governed, the tourism strategy that we had before in terms of the growth we were pursuing, all bets are off. And there is a blank sheet of paper in front of the government at the moment and agencies like Tourism New Zealand and TIA and others to look at what the future of tourism looks like. And this will start to happen across different sectors. So I'm working with the food and fibre sector on what that looks like at the moment for them. They're affected differently to tourism, but they are affected. And so in your, whatever sector or industry you're in, you might want to think about how you can start participating in that conversation, because most of you will have a really valuable contribution to make. And it's a good time to get involved, because that window of redesign while the bike is upside down and things aren't operating, that will close and will start to return to some normality, or at least your attention will shift to your own business and getting operational again. So if you've got ideas and creativity and capability, then now's a really good time to get involved in some of those critical conversations around restart and recovery. I mentioned that the restart and recovery plans are being put in place in every region. It looks like there is going to be an elevation of the sustainable transition required to tackle things like climate change. That's something to consider for your business, both in terms of preparing for future impacts and changes around the way our economy and tax system is, for example, thinking about businesses with high carbon footprints and how you might fare moving forward. It's likely the government is going to see an opportunity here to recognise that to get to a low carbon economy, which is a goal they've committed to get to become a zero carbon country, to get to that place requires significant government intervention and stimulus. And so when you think about the fact that climate change is a very urgent issue and will require that from the government soon, but the political license and capital hasn't been there to spend in that way just yet, you'll see why it will make sense for them to bring those two things together and go, hey, whilst we are investing in businesses and whilst we are creating jobs and whilst we're injecting billions of dollars into the economy, why not couple this with the sustainable transition so that we kind of strengthen our hand and create a more resilient and sustainable economy as we move forward into some of these other global issues which are also pressing and potentially more significant. So think about your business's position there with your carbon footprint, your impact on biodiversity, and whether a redesign of our economy to be low carbon would be advantageous to your business, or whether you need to make some changes there. Stuart's put a comment in regarding this, which is thinking about sustainability. Some companies like ours pay significant amounts of money in carbon credits to achieve a carbon zero status. I believe this is an oxymoron as the system itself is not sustainable. Interested in your thoughts? Yeah, totally understand. So what Stuart's referring to is achieving carbon zero status through carbon credits, which is obviously our carbon trading at the moment. Personally, I hope that we start to look at things like a carbon tax, so we design a whole tax system around carbon footprints and actually see some changes that way. But in terms of the carbon zero status, I think one of the concerns that all of us have who are interested in this space is that in tough economic times, people spending additional money on things like carbon credits and achieving the carbon zero status may drop into the back seat, and that's why I expect there'll be some more systematic changes from government rather than relying on those individual actions moving forward. Sustainable in the short term can involve a lot more cash investment. In the long term, it can save lots of money, but businesses, are going to be a lot more careful with their spending. And so I think things like funding carbon zero statuses will be challenged. And as you say, Stuart, there's big flaws in the system itself as well in terms of land use and all sorts of sensitive issues that come out of that. So totally understand with your point there. The sixth thing, of course, is global uncertainty and reshaping. So those of us in the tourism industry who work there know that the border closure kind of mattered, but kind of didn't really, because actually tourism has stopped all around the world anyway. And, particularly been thinking a lot of places like the Cook Islands who, are almost entirely dependent on tourism for their country's wealth and employment prospects, and knowing that the impacts of international tourism coming to its knees will be really significant and widespread. That's just not an economic impact either. Our ability to not travel and see friends and family around the world and experience different cultures and all the things that tourism offers us will also have a social impact. And so I'm hoping in New Zealand we get this trans-Tasman bubble, and Australia's trajectory looks pretty positive, and so maybe we'll be able to start looking at opening the borders up soon. But I think we're also aware that with the different response that we've decided to take and the fact that we've gone through this initial pain, that the likelihood that we'll take big risks in the introduction of COVID-19 is unlikely. And so we'll be looking at border closure for a while at least. So just recognizing that your business will be affected by the global uncertainty. There is upsides to this. Like I said, I've been working with the food and fibre sector, and one of the interesting things there is that for a lot of industries within food and fibre, whilst there were some immediate operational kind of jolts around not being able to export or China going into lockdown, all those things, what a lot of them have found is that as China's come out of lockdown and has largely eradicated COVID-19, then they're actually more interested in New Zealand food than ever before. And so there's been actually a bit of an upswing in some particular industries, such as dairy and meat and things, where they are actually, people come out of lockdown and want nice food and drink. And so there are interesting opportunities as the global disruption continues and different countries come in and out of lockdown and deal with it differently. It's worth observing things internationally and understanding where you sit in terms of export and trade with those particular countries. Right, so that was my best attempt at a state of business, state of the nation, where I see things standing at the moment, because it's hard to make, at the moment because we're facing so much uncertainty and we're all doing our best to crystal ball gaze at the moment and work out what the future looks like. All we can do is observe trends and observe changes in behavior that we're seeing and that we're experiencing ourselves, and work out what they mean moving forward. But now I want to move on to the second part of the webinar today, which is, so in that context, how can I be really effective, and in my business, how do I survive and thrive through this time? So the first thing I recommend you do, if you haven't already, and please, if you haven't already, recognize that is some level of avoidance, because right now the most important and urgent thing for you to do is to assess your scenarios. So whatever business you're in, you've been disrupted in some ways. For a handful of businesses, that's been really positive. Like if you own a supermarket, for example, then the outcome's been really good. But for the most part, businesses are in decline at the moment. So whether your revenue's gone to zero or it's just been affected, then that will have an impact on your business right now. For a lot of you, it will mean big changes and big restructures, and for some of you, it will mean closure. The way I like to look at this is, and we had a discussion about this on the webinar this morning, is just really run 3 scenarios. My brain knows that I need to see the worst case scenario. I get a certain level of comfort and confidence from going to what is the worst thing that could possibly happen here, and what does that actually mean? If you're in a small business, then I encourage you to consider the value of your personal brand out of this as well. Because I know lots of people who are facing potential closure of their business, but that their personal brand is really strong and their trust in the community is really high and their reputation really matters. And so for a lot of them, it means a personal pivot, but it doesn't necessarily mean that their business prospects are affected. It just means that they're going to change significantly. So run the worst case scenario. What does it look like if my revenue doesn't start again? What does it look like if I can't negotiate my way out of fixed cost? What are the implications on the business, and what does it mean moving forward? And I know for some of you that's a bleak picture, but it's a good one to draw up right now so you understand that, and also recognize the point at which that kicks in. The point at which you need to think, okay, I'm losing money here. I don't see the future prospects being that strong, and I need to consider closing the doors, because that's the reality for some businesses right now. Then what's the best case scenario? So, New Zealand is looking like we've got a very successful eradication strategy in place. We will come out of lockdown shortly. We'll go into level 3. We may only be in level 3 for 2 weeks, who knows? We may get a trans-Tasman bubble. There are other countries like Singapore and Taiwan that are also, I know Singapore's bounced back a bit, but there are other countries that are looking at elimination strategies as well. So potentially, depending on how this rolls out, maybe the economic situation, there is an optimistic upside of the restart being a lot faster than we think. Or you may look at and explore new opportunities, which we'll talk about as well. So what's the best possible outcome for your business? And then find yourself somewhere in between and go, what's the likely case here? What's my gut on the information I've got and my energy levels and commitment to this business? Because for some people, it's an excuse to step back as well, and that's totally fine. But what's the most likely outcome here, and what are my strategies in each of these areas, and which one am I going to choose to pursue? That worst case plan, unless your business is immediately affected and you need to close, and that worst case plan should be written out and then tucked away for a bit, because obviously you don't want to pursue the worst case scenario. But it's good because when the impact of that comes down on your business, it's very hard to see the wood from the trees. So it's a good idea right now to make a commitment to yourself to say, for some of you, it'll be, this is how much money I'm willing to put into my business to prop it up, or this is how long I'll keep my staff on before I start making them redundant, to start to establish some bottom lines that if your business remains in decline, how long are you willing to ride this out? Because if there's too much emotion invested in that decision, then the chances of you getting yourself into a worse place financially are much higher. So do that worst case scenario now, do the best case scenario, and then look at the strategy you're going to pursue as the most likely scenario. The second thing, if you haven't already, and I encourage you to, is obviously batten down the hatches. I use the photo of the storm here because we are navigating through a storm at the moment. And it's important that every business has a continuity plan in place, and where you really look at how can I run as lean an operation as possible through this time without affecting my future business prospects. So in many ways, whether it's in marketing or systems or digital or whatever it is, and I'll talk about some of those opportunities soon, but in many respects, there's never been a better time to invest, because I know lots of marketing agencies and IT consultants and things who have been put out of work, or their businesses declined, and so their enthusiasm and energy for taking on new clients is much higher. There's a different level of humility in the service industry at the moment that's worth taking advantage of. So I don't want to say, in encouraging you to batten down the hatches, that doesn't mean don't invest in your business. If you're in a position to invest in your business so that you come out stronger, then in many respects there's never been a better time. But if you are at a point where you need to pull back on expenses, then the first place to start, of course, is to renegotiate all your fixed costs as quickly as possible. That means a conversation with your landlord. It means reassessing your lending options with the bank around debt repayments, looking at equipment leases and whether you can give up equipment that's not in operation at the moment, removing all the overheads you no longer need. I know for me that removing the entertainment overhead of going to the Spriggan Fern with Brocky and drinking wine and eating nice dinners with people like Stuart Bean, the entertainment line item in my business has made quite a significant difference, as it turns out. So removing the overheads that you no longer need throughout this time can be really powerful. Then 3, if you're planning investments that could benefit from the current climate, then invest now where possible, because there's a small window of opportunity here whereby things will be cheaper. And if, for example, if you're looking at expanding a restaurant or opening a new restaurant or premises, then not all hospitality operators will make it. And so buying things like refrigeration and tables and all of those things that you normally have to face the real and true costs of, a lot of that's being devalued at the moment. And so there are investment opportunities there that are unique and worth considering. Same with commercial premises and things like that. There's obviously more pressure on those landlords and owners right now to get tenants in. And so for some people who can invest, there'll be interesting opportunities there. But if you're planning investments and you're uncertain about the future, then now's the time to put them on pause. I also think that whilst there is not a whole lot of new activity in this particular lockdown, if you're looking for like a building consent or something, it's a good time to push those ahead and get those across the line. But be wary of making large investments if you're uncertain. Just reassess them right away. And yes, Stuart, we will be doing a shard regularly. Don't worry about that. And the home delivery warrant costs have gone up in this household quite substantially. The 4th thing is get your team in a clear position as quickly as possible. And remember, this is not a problem of your doing. So I can see business owner carrying a big weight at the moment in terms of the impact this has on their team. And I know that's real and it's personal, but you didn't create COVID-19. It's not your fault. Everyone is equally affected by this in some way. And so it's important that you recognize that whilst it's your job to deal with that, it's your job to communicate clearly with your team, it's your job to make decisions, that you just be as clear about your position as possible without owning it too much. Because if you own it, you'll carry it. And right now your team needs you, your team and your business and your family needs you to be at your best. And so the more distance you can get from that and understanding that this is not a problem of your doing, then the likely stronger and more committed and stable leadership you'll be able to offer through that time. And of course, battening down the hatches involves adding as much value to existing customers as possible. It doesn't need to be expensive. There are loads of examples of businesses who are doing this well, from bread recipe tutorials to how to make your own tea blends, to free education like this. Focus on serving those existing customers to secure what you have effectively and actually strengthen your business moving forward. The third thing is to communicate clearly, and I really recommend, if you haven't already, to check out Jonathan Carson's interviews. Jonathan's one of the copywriters we use at Shift On, and we've done a lot of work together. He's done some fantastic work with our clients, and I did a great interview with him. He's in Germany at the moment, but we did a great interview on how to communicate through this time. And he's coined this term mindful marketing. And so I intentionally put there, be mindful of your messaging, because your ability to take a deep breath and pause right now before you communicate is crucial to the success of your communications. People were already drowning in information and starving for wisdom. This is an old slide from our workshops, not a new one. The level of commercial messaging and information coming at us was overwhelming and growing rapidly by the day. But COVID-19 has not reduced any of that noise, it's increased it. Now it's harder to escape. We're spending more time on social media and more time glued to the news, but we have more information coming at us because things are moving so quickly. I use this quite often, but and it's pre-COVID, of course, but we're exposed to 3,000 commercial messages every day. We only notice 80. We only respond to 10. So the important thing is asking yourself as a business, why would I be one of the 10 that people respond to right now? And when I talk about mindful communications with Jonathan, one of the things we ask people to explore is why they matter right now, why your business deserves people's attention during this time while they're overloaded and overwhelmed with information. And I've seen some businesses get this spectacularly wrong and massively overstate their importance during this time. And so please avoid the panic posts. Take a breather before doing any external communications, because the panic post out of desperation to get some sales through the door, or asking for help for your business, or getting on a platform of self-interest, which is understandable right now, is not likely going to wash well. I encourage tourism operators as well at the moment who are not operational to stop trying to sell experiences that don't exist at the moment. There will be a bounce back, and the temptation to get cash in the bank is real, and I understand that. But if the only time people hear from you during this global crisis and pandemic is you trying to get a sale out of them at a more uncertain time than ever, when they don't even know how they can use it, then that is not an effective communication. That is not the kind of communication that makes them fall in love with your business more. Yes, people want to support local businesses right now, and there's a time and a place for things like SOS cafes and donating money to local cafes and supporting business and things. But if you make your communications purely about self-interest right now, then people will see through that. And there's a magnification of people who behave in that way right now. I did a great interview with Lance Jensen, a business coach from Wellington recently, and he said very eloquently, if you were a dick before, you're a bigger dick now. And that's the whole lotto story there, of when people win lotto, it just kind of exaggerates what's already there. And so if your business was already acting in that way, then it's more likely that's going to be exaggerated through this time. But there is also the temptation, because people are in new positions and they're feeling less secure and less flush than ever before, then of course to double down on trying to squeeze something out of that. The thing is, with all of those panic sales message and all those panic promotions, is they don't really work anyway. And I've seen lots of customers go through them. And instead of that, I request that rather than rushing sales or restart or reopening messages, that you just be really sensitive right now, be gentle, go easy on people, because a lot of people are feeling that right now, and they need to feel that empathy from your business. So how do you then deal with it? So if you are in tourism, like I talked about before, rather than selling deals, then communicate clearly about what your plan is. Reassure them that you're going to be there on the other side of it, that your business is in a good position, that you remain more committed to your industry than ever before, but don't make promises that you can't necessarily fulfill. Same with restaurants and things. I know there's a lot of uncertainty. Services business, recognize that things are different, that times are changing, but double down on rebuilding confidence in your business and offer empathy in the fact that you care and you understand where your customers are at. That's likely to go a lot further for you than trying to squeeze a sale out of them in these interesting times. So broadly, offer that empathy and understanding to your community rather than being internal about your messaging. Don't make it about yourself. Look at creative ways of adding value and assisting people through this time. It doesn't even necessarily have to be directly related to your product and service. I know Paul Brocky, who I think is on the line here, he made a comment before, his business Absolute Energy, which is a great business that has been closed during level 4. His business, they had sorry if I botched this, Brocky, but they had a $500 refund or discount on some of the vans they brought, and they donated it straight to the community rather than accepting that. Now, in these uncertain economic times, doing things like that is harder, but it actually goes further. So it means more right now when people are taking positive action like that and making a contribution to their community. It's more visible than ever before. It's more appreciated than ever before by people like the charities that Brocky donated to, because they're struggling for donations and business support right now because businesses are struggling. So when I talk about creative ways of adding value and assisting people, that may be just doubling down on your impact and input into your local community and working out how you can help as best possible. And think through the things that matter while you're not operational and bring those to the forefront. So every business should be asking themselves right now, why does my brand matter? Why should people care? And how can I double down on that? Because when your business is not operational and you're not selling actively, then that's all that matters. And that's the only thing that'll get you through. So if you're scraping the barrel on why you matter, then now's a great time to really give that some thought and give yourself an opportunity to bring that to the forefront so that people can care and they can engage with you. The businesses that have done this well are absolutely thriving at the moment because they do matter, and I'm connected to those businesses and I see their social responsibility and I care and I want to engage and support them, and they'll be the first businesses that get our money on the other end of this as well. Yeah, so the Brockies just said the charity was Kai with Love, feeding the most in need, and it was a $500 refund on the car. So just thinking about things like that your business can do right now to support the community during this time. The fourth thing is to seek out new opportunities. So have a look at your current business and assess whether you actually need to pivot completely. I know, for example, businesses that are forced to do this at the moment, but I also know of businesses that are not forced and are in a reasonably comfortable position, but are just seeing new opportunities cropping up as a result of COVID-19. Our business is one of those businesses where I'm seeing potential changes and an evolution of our business that was not clear to me beforehand, but as a result of this shake-up in the landscape, we're seeing that more clearly. So take the time right now to have a look at your business and where you're heading, and has that changed, and are there new opportunities that will result as part of this? So I know I reference tourism a lot, but the tourism businesses, I know that the energy or ability of them to compete domestically was really challenged by cheap airfares to places like Fiji. And the biggest block to encouraging domestic tourism was just largely that international travel was really cheap. That has changed. And so there's a new opportunity emerging to solidify locals' commitment to tourism, solidify our domestic tourism market so that when the borders do reopen and New Zealand is still an attractive place to visit, and a safe haven around the world, that we have locals, domestic and international tourism thriving, whereas previously, the two of those were being neglected. So what are the new opportunities right now for your business? The fifth thing is to take radical action. And again, I said at the beginning, It won't necessarily be the right time for all of you to do this. So if it's best to rest and recover right now, then please do. But when the time's right, if you are facing any level of uncertainty, then the best antidote to that is to just take action and start taking steps forward. You don't need to fix the world's problems, but you can make a start. And every proactive activity that you do right now to contribute to the future growth and potential and strengthening of your business is an activity that is helping you get through, and it's helping you keep people employed and helping you, build wealth and success through your business. So I want to run through those opportunities with you. The first one is to get online. So now is a better time than ever to get online and explore which parts of your business work in the digital space, because the appetite has never been stronger, which I talked about before, so I won't repeat myself. But if it wasn't there before, consider whether it is there now, because for a lot of people that will be the case. So what does it look like to get online? It doesn't actually necessarily mean that your entire business has to go online. It just may be that there are opportunities to do things digitally where people wouldn't before. So even for me, my preference would be to be doing this in person, but right now that's not an option. And actually, our response to webinars and things like the Facebook group and that has been really strong. So online education, when that became the only option, became a lot more accessible to people. And I know that through this time, people have got more comfortable using Zoom. Everyone has it downloaded now, and people are using it and they're recognizing that actually it's a great tool. Whereas prior, we might not have got the same level of engagement because people didn't have to. And so the same will exist across your industry, whether you do assessments online, whether you can do quotes online, whether you can set up databases to capture information that you would have otherwise previously had to send a staff member to. Now's the time to start thinking about how to get online in ways in your business that you would have previously ignored while the appetite's there, and you can take advantage of that. The second is to build systems. So off the back of that operationally, then you need the sharpest systems possible in your business, because this is often something that takes a back seat while the bike's going forward fast. You don't really want to change systems in your business because it has huge operational impacts on your day-to-day. But while your staff aren't there and your customers aren't buying from you, that is the best time to look at a reset around systems. And I like to think about customer journeys and processes, and I encourage everyone to do this, which is knowing what I know now. If I started my business again today, what shape would it take? So over your journey in business, through the ups and the downs, and the successes and the failures, you've learned a shitload of stuff about what works and what doesn't in your industry and in your community. So if you were to take a blank sheet of paper now and start your business again, what would it look like? What systems would you put in place? What would your customer journey be like? How would you talk to them? And what moments would you interact with them, and how? What format would that take? Start to design that with a fresh piece of paper, because for a lot of you, that's exactly the opportunity you've got with operations coming to a stop. And so off the back of that, you want to build systems that make your business more efficient and more effective. The ability to communicate every step away with your customers in an automated fashion is unprecedented. And so the technology that's available to you now is the time to bring that into your business and assess, the systems and the tools and the processes that you can build to make your business more effective moving forward. All the things you do proactively are things that other businesses are probably not doing at the moment. And so it just puts you in a more competitive position when you come out of this. Look at pivoting to new products or services. Businesses change forever, and this is an opportunity to reposition yourself for that new economy. So I looked at, before at some of the economic opportunities there that's happening on a national level. Obviously, consumer behavior has shifted just online to essential services. What does that mean for you? What are the implications of that for your business? And do you need to alter your products and services to fit that? It's also a great time to invest in your people. So if you've got the right staff right now and you're really happy with your team, then now's a great time to double down on your investment there. If you've got the cash to do so, then this is a chance to prove your loyalty with your team. And I know businesses on the call who have done exactly that. They've said, no, we are a family, and we are a business that really cares, and we've got the ability to help our staff through right now. So we're going to do it, because that will strengthen the loyalty and commitment to our business coming back into it. But also invest in your people in such a way that if they are being sent home right now and you really don't have a lot of work for them, then consider investing in their education, giving them some online trainings, getting them on webinars. What would it look like to give all of your staff big training opportunities right now, so that when they come back with new skills or increased resilience around emotional intelligence and all the things you want your staff to have that you're normally, again, trying to do while the wheels are turning very fast. For the most part, training involves getting a presenter in to your workplace, spending quite significant money on it, and taking time out from operational work, which is productive and makes money, to do that training. And it's usually still worth it. But right now, a lot of you have staff at home who can't work, who you're still paying, or at least who are still receiving a subsidy. And that is an opportunity to upskill that workforce if you intend to retain them. So have a think about how you might invest in your people right now. If you don't have the money, then consider what role you can play in helping educate and inform them, or building closer relationships with them. I've talked to employers in the last couple of weeks who have really enjoyed getting to know their staff better through Zoom, because they're seeing their kids again, and they're seeing their pets and their home environments, and that matters to them. And so if you don't have the funds to invest right now in that online education, which a lot of it's free anyway, but if you don't have the funds to do that, then make sure you're investing time in your team and keeping in touch with them. And the fifth thing is to build your brand. So now is a better time than ever to be revisiting things like your website, your messaging, creative assets, and overall communications. It's the best time to be auditing everything you say, all your online assets, and considering whether they're as good as they can be, or whether now is a great opportunity to enhance them, because the importance of your brand just elevated significantly. And those of you who have made investments in your brand will be feeling that, and those of you who haven't will be feeling the pinch as a result of that. Because right now, if you're not selling, you're brand building, and you are always brand building, whether it's positive or negative. You're always developing, enhancing, or declining your reputation. And so now is a greater opportunity than ever to build the brand and show why you matter, and that is across all channels. So now is a really good time to reassess that. Start thinking about, why does my business matter? What are the things I'm saying to my customers? What are the communication points? If you've got a process like quoting and delivering on a construction job that occurs regularly, then think about the types of things you're saying to your customers during those times, the tips you're giving them, the advice and the insights, because too often we cut corners and just do the bare minimum or what we can get away with. Whereas if you've got time now to build your brand, then you can enhance that experience in such a way that you'll be the preferred provider on the other side of this. So start thinking about ways to really build your brand. So have a quick scan of that list. I'm just going to have a quick glass of water, and please, if you've got any questions or comments, then list them below, and then we'll move on to the last part of the session. All right, so in this last part of the session, I want to encourage you all I'm basically going to walk you through and revisit some of the things that we've been saying at Shift On for some time now, through the lens of the way the world has changed as a result of COVID-19. So the first really quick reminder is that we've always operated within the context of this sales and marketing funnel. I do it because I think it's really simple and straightforward for people to understand. And whether you're thinking of starting a new business, pivoting your existing business, or strengthening and enhancing your existing business, then these 5 steps around the customer journey are truer and more reliable than ever before. So I want to run you through them quickly. First one, find you. How will you actually generate leads? Where will people discover your business? How will they generate that initial interest? Second one, remember you. If we're drowning in information, then people's ability to stop and recognize your business at a time where they won't buy from you immediately, which is the vast majority of visitors to your website or your Facebook page, for example. And then think about how they will remember you. What can you do to capture their email address or get them to connect with you on social media so they get your other posts? The third thing is, what are the opportunities for people to try you before they buy? They are those kind of foolproof offers that are just no-brainers, like adding value through information, or a free trial, or a free discovery session, or a free quote. Those no-obligation moments where you get the opportunity to provide your potential customers with an experience that is a positive one to help accelerate their confidence and trust in buying from you. Fourth, How will people buy from you? How will they actually do business from you? What is the transaction point? I've had a lot of interesting experiences trying to access online services throughout this time, and some people have taken the time to make it ridiculously easy to give them money, and others have made it very, very hard. I know dealing with like a fruit and veggie shop that it took 3 days to get a box of veggies ordered through Facebook Messenger backwards and forwards, and huge delays. And then eventually it arrived, but I'd already been to the supermarket and brought all the fruit and veg anyway, so it was a double up. So now a really bad experience. And then it took another 2 days on top of that to actually get their bank account number and pay them. So think about how easy are you making it for people to buy from you. And if you're in a business that's likely to experience a very quick bounce back, so if you're a restaurant delivering in level 3, for example, it's entirely possible that the early demand for those restaurants around takeaways and things will be incredibly high. If you are dealing with that over Facebook Messenger, then the experience is going to be bad for you and bad for the customer. If you are a hairdresser, and those of us who are not confident doing this at home, then if you are looking at a rebound on the other side, and you're like my barber, which, I used to already sit and wait at my barber for 45 minutes to an hour to get a usual appointment. And that was in close proximity. So I know when the barber's doors swing open again, they probably won't be able to have as many chairs open. They won't be able to let you sit in the waiting room together because that won't work. And they'll be absolutely flooded with demand from cavemen like me who haven't been able to get a snip for a couple of months. So those types of businesses need to think about how easy can I make it for commerce to be done with me? How easy can I make it for people to buy from me? How can I make these transactions cashless right now? And again, that's something you're unlikely to ever go back on. So whatever business you're in, thinking about enhancing people's ability and access to buy from you right now is a really, really good place to be. And lastly, what are you asking people to do in terms of referrals? So every customer is an opportunity for a rave to be, to create a raving advocate. And if you actually are conscious about what you want people to do, i.e., review you on Google or leave you a comment on TripAdvisor or your Facebook page or whatever it is, then start to think about being more deliberate in that space and actually requesting that kind of feedback and referral from people, creating systems that helps you create those referrals. I've referenced it a lot in the interviews I've done, but the Cheer Sisters, which are a beverage company in Nelson, have rolled out an initiative where you nominate a local cafe when you buy drinks from them online and they pay the cafe cash. Now, that was a great thing to do in terms of getting money through to cafes, which is a critical part of their business and an absolutely generous and awesome thing to do. But of course, in the process, they created all these raving advocates for them, which has meant that their brand is heightened. And if they're looking at competition in terms of supplying beverages on the other side of this, then Cheer Sisters are shining right now through that process and are best positioned for referrals and advocacy and brand reputation on the other side. So what does that look like for you? I know Linda and Kim are both on the line from Black Sheep Touring, and they've done a phenomenal job of creating creating stories and revisiting memories from their customers through this time. And they've been put in a position where they can't operate for the foreseeable future because their business is in international tourism here in New Zealand. And so in that time, they are communicating with their customers more in a positive light and keeping New Zealand and Black Sheep Touring top of mind for people who will be customers with them again, who are their brand advocates, who are a part of their flock, as they like to refer to it. And I think that the response from that has been really positive. And these are the types of brands that even if you're kneecapped operationally right now, you're in a better position moving forward because you've done those things to brand build and build the right advocates right now. So I really encourage you to take note of this. Find you, remember you, try you, buy you, and refer you. Marketing at times can seem extremely complicated, but in actual fact, it's as simple as that. Have multiple opportunities for people to find you online and offline. Make sure that when they do so, you've got the ability to capture them so that they can remember you. Then that they've got the ability to try or have an experience with your company before they're asked to give up money, so that you can get them further along the process in terms of the way you're nurturing them. Then try and make it as easy as possible for them to buy from you so that it's not complicated or time consuming because people don't have the patience for it. And then when they've had that whole positive experience, then make sure you're very deliberate about how you want them to refer you. And then of course that cycles back around because referrals are one of the, word of mouth is the most effective marketing tool. And the easiest and best place for people to find your business as well. So I really encourage you to think about those steps for your business and what that looks like moving forward. For some of you, it wouldn't have changed. For others, it probably has. So I'm just reviewing my new rules here and whether I've got time for it. So I'll really quickly run through these, and I'm happy to provide the slides, by the way, afterwards. So if you want to reference these back, then I am going to kind of run through them probably about 30 seconds each, so that we can get through this and still have a little bit of time for questions. So if you've got any specific questions, then now's a good time to drop them in, because I'll get to addressing them shortly, and we'll wrap up by 5 o'clock. But I wanted to look at these new rules of marketing because they're stronger than ever before, and they're in no particular order, and they are a mixture of strategy, tactics, and big picture thinking around where marketing is heading. I believe really strongly, and I've had some positive conversations over the past few weeks with marketers and communicators who agree with this, which is the trajectory we're on with marketing in terms of more human-to-human interactions. That trajectory has been substantially sped up by COVID-19, but it was a trajectory that we were already on. So there's a lot of things that we've been saying throughout the workshops and that we run and the one-on-one sessions we have, that are ringing true now more than ever before. And so I want to share those with you because it's a refresher and reminder of the things you need to be focusing on in your business to be successful through this time. The first one is authenticity. Being real creates trust. Being fake creates fear. If you're operating from a place of trying to be something that you're not at the moment, or trying to curate an image that's not you, then you are likely breeding that fear of your business. And the one reason people won't buy from you is because they fear you, right? They don't trust you. So if you want to create trust, which is the most valuable currency, then consider what you can do to be more authentic as a business. I had a great conversation with Rachel, who I mentioned earlier, Rachel Claver from Identify Marketing. We discussed the difference between authenticity and transparency. So transparency is sharing everything, sharing all of your thoughts, right? That's on that level of honesty where you're just kind of unfiltered and unregulated. That's not what authenticity is. Authenticity still involves some curation. It still involves some design. It still involves input and crafting and shaping of how you want to appear as a business and a person. These are the things that we should be being deliberate about. But in honing those in and focusing on them, you can find a more authentic space for you to operate in that creates energy. And that breeds trust, because people know when those things are in alignment, where the way your business is and the way you are and the type of customers you're attracting. When those things are in alignment, then business is a whole lot easier than if you're trying to force shit uphill and work with people that you don't enjoy. So think about authenticity right now for your business. The second thing is, whilst we're spending more time on social channels right now, they are noisier than ever. So what are you doing to grab people's attention? Because that is a really important currency right now in marketing, is how do I actually get the attention, and why do I deserve the attention of my customers? The third thing is thinking around attraction in terms of interruption. Another change that I believe has been fast-tracked through this whole COVID-19 experience is the kind of loss, or the end, I think, of interruption-style marketing, where people are shouting from the rooftops to try and get their attention, where the 4 Ps of like price, product, place, all of the promotion, all those 4 Ps that used to be the truest thing in marketing have been replaced with things like exchange and evangelism, and everywhere the expectation that your business needs to participate in lots of different channels and lots of different spaces, and that rather than pushing yourself onto people and trying to sell really hard to people, which they have fatigue for, you're actually creating a desirable, unique, memorable, meaningful brand that people are attracted to. And if you do that, then you'll be winning at this whole strategy around attraction marketing. Attraction marketing isn't just more effective right now, it also means your customers like you at the end of it. Whereas there are styles of marketing that still exist, where if you are interrupting people constantly and fighting them and talking about yourself and yelling over them, and all those old styles of interruption advertising, especially selling through fear, selling through negativity, which motivates people, it does work. But at the end of it, it leaves a bad taste in people's mouths, and your customers ultimately don't love you. And so that cycle we talked about before of the 5 steps around how to get your marketing moving, The brand advocates aren't there because you've rammed it down their throats and you've forced them into a corner where they've made a decision out of fear. So start to think about, how can I flip this on its head and look at attraction style marketing that will bring people to me during this time and create that constant flow of business. The more you do this, the more you're like a magnet in the market, right? Because a lot of people are still operating that old space of interruption. They're still taking the old rules of marketing into this new space, and ultimately, what we need to see happen is that people look at attraction to bring their customers in. But if you're the only one doing that in your industry, then it will be like a moth to the light bulb, right? People will notice and they will resonate and respond to your brand more. The fourth thing is automation. So how to get the right message to the right person at the right time. I talked before about systems. I know for businesses, but particularly for membership organizations like industry-based organizations and chambers of commerce and things like that, if they did not have good automation in place, then it's been extremely difficult to communicate with their customers and provide the right support at the moment. The ability to reach out and understand your customer. So if I've got a piece of content to put out right now that's only about the hospitality industry, then I should try and only talk to people in hospitality. The same goes for your business. Your customers have all come to you for a reason. Understanding what their needs are, what their level of interest is, what their environment is, what their circumstances means you can get the right message to them at the right time. Because the wrong message at the wrong time or to the wrong person then certainly creates a bad customer experience. And that's when people's attention switches and they switch off, and then it's very hard to get them back. So you spend money acquiring them onto your website or onto your email list or onto your Facebook page, and then ultimately, eventually they switch off, and you have to go through the whole process again of acquiring fresh leads. So focus on automation right now through tools like ActiveCampaign and Zoho and Infusionsoft and MailChimp around how can I make sure I get through to these people and be as relevant and deliberate about that as possible. The next one is empathy. So more important than ever right now, but just as a business, listening and listening and listening to your customers, because ultimately you should know your customer better than they know themselves. And the only way to do that is there's no greater strategy than actually listening and empathy, because it's particularly on social right now, rather than trying to fight it, rather than trying to be a part of that noise, just being empathetic towards where people are at is the most effective social strategy. And we're thinking about the way social media has changed. So, obviously in the online world, the online marketing, when we go back to things like banner ads, was all about clicks. That was the strategy, is how do I get clicks through to my ad right now so I can get the business done. So then we kind of evolved into a social space where it was more about likes, but that's evolved again, and now it's about emotion. It's like, how do I not only get people's attention, but then how do I get an emotional response from them as well? Because it's only that emotional response, whether it's sadness or anger or happiness or whatever it is, it's only in that emotional response that you'll actually get the cut through with people, that people will actually see and understand and engage with your business in a meaningful way. So start thinking about, have I evolved through this, or am I just still trying to get clicks or purchases, or am I now building evangelism and brand following and brand loyalty and community by creating emotion with my audience? Again, evangelism, the same thing. So how do I move from thinking about customers to community? Because if you can't serve your customers right now, then all you have is community. So it's never been more important to consider what that means for you and what that means for your business. This is one of my favorites at the moment because it was the clearest message that I had to come out with early on in this process around how to communicate during the crisis, which is stop selling, start helping. The most effective way to sell in 2020 and beyond, COVID or no COVID, is to be helping people and adding as much value as possible. If you are useful and informative and entertaining and you matter, then people will naturally want to buy from you. And it's a much more pleasant experience than getting directly hard sold to. If you are selling and not creating value, then people will switch off straight away. If you are adding value and selling, that's great as well. I go one step further than that. I'm more radical than that. I think it's great to have a call to action. I think it's that you need to tell people what the next step is and where to go with that. But I actually find, in terms of content and workshops and events like this, the less you sell, the better, because I just don't think people are up for it. I don't think people want that anymore. They understand that there is benefit in a business like mine doing a webinar like this. That's obvious. You understand that. I don't need to ram it down your throats, and quite frankly, I don't want to. And so think about, for your business, what does it look like to completely rethink that hard selling mentality, to going, how can I be the most useful person? How can I be a brand that matters and offer an exchange to my customers, which builds loyalty and connection and gives me the opportunity to talk to them? The next one is customer. So know the customer better than they know themselves. I've talked a lot about, for those of you who have been on calls with me before, I've talked a lot about understanding your target audience and actually looking directly at your customer in terms of the psychographics, not just where they live and how much they earn and what their status is in terms of family and things like that, but actually understanding their fears and hesitations and their hobbies and desires and all of those things. Right now is a good time to reassess that, because your customers may have changed through this time. So if you're looking at if you're thinking about pivoting to a new product, then you'll need to rethink your customer avatar. Or if your clients were all international tourists, then you'll need to rethink your customer avatar. And that customer avatar affects your brand and your messaging and your marketing, but it also affects your products and your pricing as well. So start with getting to know your customer first and understanding them, and then work on the redesign of your business from there. Be very aware of clickbait right now. This links back into, whether we're promoting and trumpeting doom and gloom right now, or we're promoting and trumpeting optimism and hope and confidence. I know what's more attractive. It's easy to fall into the trap of talking about all the things that are not right at the moment and focusing on the things that we can't control. But a more empowering state for people is when you focus on the things you can control, and focus on the things that you can improve and enhance right now, and focus on the upsides and the positives. I know that relentless and blind positivity right now is not helpful, and people who are doing that, I think, are really missing a note, and that's not working. But optimism is welcome. Building confidence in people right now is welcome. And as a business, you should be trying to do that with your team. You should be trying to do it with your customers. Offer realism, but make sure you're not talking yourself into problems that don't exist. And when it comes to your marketing, don't let the clickbait and fake news drive your strategy. If you are looking for a business bounce back and you believe that the economy will completely collapse and that we're going back to the times of Great Depression, then you might as well give up now anyway. So if that's the headspace you're in, then just recognize that language and that information can be quite hypnotic, and actually deal on hard facts. Those facts are your current position. I heard businesses talking themselves into closure well before the lockdown occurred, and well before they had a clear view of their support and their viability as a business. So just be wary of the input around clickbait and news and those short headlines that can create that kind of fear, and actually make sure you're always dealing in facts and truth and honesty with your business, and taking the time out to do that deep work yourself. The next one is around consistency. So I believe that whilst businesses are being asked to be everywhere all the time at the moment on every social platform, the demand for your participation in these areas and your overall consumer demands has probably never been greater. But I think the most effective strategy is to recognize that you can't do everything. You can't be really good at every single social media channel. So I encourage you to do fewer things consistently. Rather than posting every day for the sake of posting every day on Facebook, do fewer things and create higher quality content, because consistently shit content is just consistently shit content. Whereas amazing content, if it's only once a week, is still going to be more effective. So yes, there are arguments around frequency, but when people ask me for rules of engagement around how often to post and things like that, my view is, as often as you've got something worth saying. How long should my video be? As long as it takes to communicate your message. And I think these things are really important to remember now, that it's about doing things effectively rather than doing average things consistently all the time. So think about what that rhythm might look like in your business and where your focus might go. If you don't have the capacity right now, then growing out to other social media platforms is probably not the answer. I know through this time I've tried to be as active and supportive of businesses as possible. an obvious place to do that would be LinkedIn. I've put nothing on LinkedIn during this time because ultimately I'm finding that Facebook is the best for me. I've put very little on Instagram as well. I find that Facebook is the most effective channel for me because I have the time and capacity to engage with it, and I seem to get a good response from it. It's tempting to be on LinkedIn as well, but I actually think that my energy is better channeled in Facebook right now. And as that grows, then we will move on to LinkedIn and Instagram and make those things work and build those platforms up. But right now, it's about doubling down on the things you're good at and where you get a response and where you get results. Another great rainy day lockdown activity would be to build a chatbot. So I'll put in the chat box here a suggested website for that, which is minichat.com, and that is a platform that will help you build up a chatbot that can operate on Messenger. So chatbots are basically just robots within messengers, and messenger platforms like WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger. And it sounds really complicated, but actually these things can be reasonably straightforward. So it involves developing content because you need to know the message content. It involves developing an architecture or information architecture because you need to understand particular pathways people take and decisions you want them to make. But ultimately, the ability to build an automated messenger response right now for your business is more accessible than ever and more important than ever. So we know from all the data that people, if they can, prefer to have digital experiences over Messenger, for example, rather than picking up the phone at the moment or rather than seeing people in person in terms of our overall pre-COVID even state. So thinking about how you might be able to, in your business right now, look at chatbots as a tool for sales, marketing, or customer service is a really effective way of actually considering new ways to add value to your customer, new ways of building systems in that will help make your business more efficient, and ways of growing sales and value and reputation with your customers. So have a think about that and check out some of the platforms that are available for people to help build those, because most of the time they're free or very low cost. The next one is making sure that everything is social at the moment. So this comes back to the stop selling. I believe that social media is bigger than just those social media platforms. I share the views of marketers like Gary Vaynerchuk that social is just the buzzword for how everything in marketing should go right now. So all of your interactions should be somewhat social, because in an increasingly digital age, people want to connect with people more than ever before. This whole idea of business to business or business to customer, I think, is over, and we're now looking at an era which is human to human interactions and human to human marketing, human to human communications. And so start thinking about how your business can be more social in general, how you can engage with your staff and customers in new ways that resonate with them because they are attracted to this way of doing things that's less about selling and less about structure and less formality, but more social. I know that, if your website language, for example, resonates and is personal and is relevant to them, then that's a more social experience, and that's bigger than just what you do on Facebook or what you do on Instagram. 14th, I've got 15 rules here, but the 14th one is story. So start telling better stories about your business. And this is a really good opportunity to do this, actually, because people want to, right now, if they can't hear about your products or services, then they want to hear more about your story. And people connect with stories. This is how people have learnt for centuries, is through storytelling. And the art of storytelling is something that if you master, it makes you a far more effective marketer and communicator. So think about your business right now. What are the stories that matter? I know, for example, Skydive over Tasman recently, I saw some things floating around of some of their history and some of the things they were putting out with regards to the strong and proud history that company has of being a significant skydiving operator in the country. And I know that those things right now, more so than selling, more so than trying to sell future experiences, for example, those are the things that create brand recognition and loyalty. So what are the stories that you can tell in your business right now? How did you get started in business? Why are you passionate about this particular business? Do you have any interesting staff who also have a story to tell? Can you help tell the stories of your customers? Do you want to engage and get to know your customers more? What are the stories that you can tell that effectively communicate things that matter to you, that gives you an opportunity to connect and reach out and get an emotional response from people. Because it's a great opportunity while people's attention is increased, or their attention on social media is still there, to talk about things that matter and tell stories that matter throughout that time. So think about that. What are the stories that you can tell in your business across all of your marketing, and how can you utilize that opportunity right now whilst people's attention is stronger on social media? And I never would do a presentation without reminding people that before you jump in on all of these different tactics, then write your strategy first. So I started this presentation by looking at and considering, what a continuity plan moving forward looks like for your business. And so I encourage you to make sure that before you dive into creating a new product, or pivoting your business, or reimagining your brand, or any of those things, that you've sat down and you've really looked at those worst case scenarios, those best case scenarios, and the likely scenarios that you're facing as a business. Because you need to know where you stand to make good, sound strategic decisions. And it's important that right now we remove, more than ever, we remove the emotion from those decisions and look to just make sound strategic decisions. And to do that, you need to be thinking about your overarching business strategy. And I encourage you to think about things like resilience right now in your business, and looking forward and going, okay, can I actually survive? Were my margins high enough? Was my cash flow frequent enough? Can I survive under this model at a reduced volume, for example, which is the question that a lot of hospitality and retailers are asking themselves as we move into level 3, is actually, if my revenue does take a big dip here, but I can still be operational, but that introduces a whole lot of costs like wages and rent and things that I may not be paying at the moment, then what level can my business survive at? What is the break-even level? What is the profitable level? And what am I willing to give to my business in that time? So set your strategy first, then build your tactics and repositioning and your pivots and everything around it. Because if you start with strategy, then you'll have a clear view of where you're heading, regardless of whether the conditions change. And a strategy is something that should be revisited all the time. Right now, more than ever, we've always been encouraging this, but your business planning should not simply be a case of, what am I doing for the next 20 years, or the next 10 years, or the next 5 or 3 or even 12 months? You need a business plan that clearly articulates a direction and vision, that you have a business strategy sitting in behind, but one that you're willing to constantly update, because the goalposts are shifting faster than ever and things have changed. A few months ago, none of us could really even imagine the scenario that we're in now, but most businesses that I know are dealing with it incredibly well, whether that's making the hard decisions right now, or whether it's in fact actually about looking at a complete pivot or reposition of your business, or whether it's just doubling down on what you're already doing well, and getting ready for the initial restart and recovery phase that our economy is going to enter into. So regardless of what it is, strategy involves you to take time out, step back, be free from distractions, have a good hard think about where you're heading, and put the time and energy and headspace in that deserves before you take action. And strategy requires you to revisit it constantly. The sooner you get it down, the better in a position you are to start. So to update. So when COVID-19 began to have an impact on our clients' businesses, I launched docs for all of them and wrote down, where are we at in terms of what we are communicating? Because a couple of weeks before lockdown, we already had to communicate about COVID-19 related things, but we were saying things like, this is what we're doing to take hygiene seriously. This is how we're keeping our staff safe. This is why we're still operating, and this is why we still care. Very quickly, we had to update their messaging to be like, okay, well, we are closing now, and this is also why, and for some of my clients, they were proactively closing. So that's why we're doing that out of social responsibility. And so we launched these docs around, what are we saying, what's our strategy, what's our fallback options, what are the questions we need to be asking, what are the things we need to consider, and then we just constantly updated it as we went through. And those docs are still live. We're still working through those step by step to try and understand where we are as a business. What does level 3 mean for us? What does level 2 mean for us? What does the restart and recovery mean? What does the rebound mean? What are our future opportunities? How have things changed? So make sure you're taking the time to have those strategic conversations, because they're more important than just taking action for the sake of action right now. It's better to get your plan together first. I'm coming to the end of the presentation here, so if you've got any questions, then now's the time to jot them in, or we'll wrap up early. But these are there are a series of questions I just want to run through, because if there's nothing else you remember from this presentation, because I realize I've talked at you a lot, and I've downloaded as much information as possible for this initial session, but I want you to really, it really distills down to these three things. From a branding perspective right now, is your brand memorable, likable, meaningful? If your brand ticks one of those boxes, great. If it ticks all three boxes, you're in a really strong position. You're in a strong position if your market demand is still there. You're in a strong position if your market demand will bounce back, or you're in a strong position if you need to look for new demand, but your brand is still all three of those things. Is it memorable? Are you likable? And is it meaningful? Do you matter as a brand? Do people like you? Do they engage with you? And do they remember you? If you can be those three things as a brand, then that is the kind of value that will carry. And if you are looking to get out of your business, or you're wanting to sell it at some point, which you should always have some sort of exit strategy in mind, then those are the three things that will make up a really effective and valuable brand. And in uncertain economic times where we don't know where we stand right now, we're not sure what the full impact and implications are moving forward, then your brand is the value that you carry. So think about investing in those things, being memorable, being likable, and being meaningful for your customers and your community. And then when it comes to the more practical stuff of your business, is it viable? If your industry, if the bottom has dropped out of your industry and there's little chance that it will return in the near future, then are you in a cash position to ride this one out? Is your business still viable? Because if it's not, and you are clear on that, then the sooner you cut the cord, if you like, and make a move on that, then the better, usually financially, before you invest lots of money in a business that may not have the ability to bounce back. So ask yourself, is my business actually viable right now? Is it moving forward? Are our profit margins high enough? Are our overheads low enough? Are we able to survive a 50% reduction in volume or revenue right now? Or would that sink us? What is our break-even level? Are we actually viable? Every business needs to run that scenario based on current information and then keep running it. Then are we lean? So now's a great time to be eliminating waste from your business. Are you as lean as possible? And if not, then how can you streamline that? If you are having to let go of staff right now, then consider whether technology might be able to replace some of the functions that staff were providing before. So think about lean efficiencies within your business, streamlining systems and delivery and operations and fulfillment in your business to get to a better place where actually you're more effective and more efficient than you ever have been, because the leaner the business, then the more likely you are to be able to adapt faster. And adaptability is all about being agile. So I realize I'm throwing around a lot of buzzwords here like lean and agile, but they do really matter. And they are things that were important in business prior, but they've become more important because the speed at which you can pivot right now and reposition your business and rethink your business is the most important thing by far. And so look at the agility of your business. Are we nimble enough? Were we able to respond fast enough? And if not, why not? How fast did we manage to close our operations down? How fast were we at communicating with our staff? What are the decision-making structures in our business? And did they work effectively when we had to respond quickly? I'm making a big effort at the moment to really encourage people to actually write down and capture the lessons through this time, because it's unlikely that an event like COVID-19 is going to come and knock us down again in a hurry. And so whilst we are moving through these stages, you're learning something new at every point. I learned different things in the weeks prior to lockdown than I did in the first weeks of lockdown. I'm learning different things about our business and about our clients' businesses every day as these things move forward. And we're just at the beginning of that, because whilst COVID-19 and this lockdown may be a relatively short period, the economic recovery is not a short period. It's a long period of time, and the reshaping of our economy will take time as well. And the global impacts of COVID-19 will take a lot of time to wash through. And so, writing down and capturing these lessons for your business right now as you really fundamentally reassess where you're at, I think is crucially important to actually being well positioned for the future. For example, it's probably a good idea to have a crisis management plan in your business. You might not have thought that a while ago, or you might not have got around to it, but now would be a good time to write it, because you know that even if COVID-19 transmission occurs here and we end up back in level 4, it'd be great to have a plan around these are the things we should have done, like switch the lights off in the office or moved our furniture home so that everyone had good desks at home, or these are the things we would do in the future to secure our premises or make sure our staff are okay. These are the things we'd communicate. What are the things you're learning right now? What are the key lessons that matter that you can take forward from this crisis? Because like that quote from Winston Churchill, we should never waste a good crisis. There are new opportunities here, and there are things that we can learn from that we should not look back on. In terms of the planning, I just want to finish really on this quote, which is from a friend of mine, Dale Beaumont, which is the clearer the picture, the fewer the decisions, the easier the choices. I know for many business owners that they're feeling incredibly overwhelmed by the uncertainty that is there at the moment and where their business is heading. But I know that the most important thing you can do there is take the ingredients that exist, which are the new opportunities, the government support, the realities of your business beforehand, the strengths of your business that are there. Take all of those ingredients and put them together and build a clear as possible picture of where your business is at right now and where it might be heading. Because then if the confusion and overwhelm is coming from the amount of decisions and choices you're having to make on a day-to-day basis, which is relentless, then you need to do more work on the bigger picture. I think about the government and the amount of decisions the government has had to make through this period at pace. We've all been through that in our businesses on a micro level of making really fast decisions, but what it required, all of your decisions need to come from a clear picture of what you're trying to do. If you're trying to close and cut your losses and walk away from your business right now, then your decisions will be different. But that picture has to be clear first around what the goal is. If your goal is to pivot and create a new business, then the decisions you make will need to be deliberate around that. If you want to come out of this leaner, then your decisions around whether to retain staff through this time, for example, or equipment and technology or subscriptions will be different based on that picture. And if your confidence is higher, now's the time to pursue growth in a market that's going in the other direction, then now's the time to start thinking about acquisition and hiring talent and all of those things. And so build the picture first and then make the decisions, because they're a lot easier as a result when you have a clear vision of where you're heading. And right now that requires constant updating, but it's still entirely possible to create. Right, that sort of brings me to the end of all the content, and I recognize that there was a lot to take in there, so I'm really happy to provide the slides moving forward so you see that. But we do have one question from Raw Christopherson from K Real Estate. And so Raw's asked, where do you see the opportunities in real estate? And I'm not sure if this is a deliberate attempt, but what you're going to get back from this, Raw, is affirmation that that you're in a good spot here, which is that obviously even though in level 3 private viewings are possible, this is not, I don't think moving forward that this has been all about what the laws and regulations are. That's why I talked about the border restrictions. For tourism, the border restrictions were the closures of the border was definite, and it was black and white, and that was awesome. But it was impactful, but it didn't really matter because international tourism was stopping anyway. And so the same with real estate. The trajectory you were on before, which is actually engaging in as much digitally online as possible and making information readily available and quickly accessible to people, and looking at doing video walkthroughs of the houses and creating seamless digital experiences for people to do business with you online and make those transactions, I think it's never been more important. And so certainly the trajectory you were on with K Real Estate, I think will serve you very well, because whilst the laws will allow for private viewings, I know that our community and our culture has changed a lot through this, because people are just not as comfortable about face-to-face interaction right now anyway. And so I know for sure that whilst the viewings will be allowed, if people can access more information about properties online, they're more likely to buy. The other thing is that it'd be very interesting to see from a real estate perspective. Obviously, we will see house prices affected. I'm going to be very interested to follow that, because I see one of New Zealand's biggest opportunities is actually looking at immigration of some of the world's best talent. And I really mean that sincerely, because I think if you're stuck in a place like New York at the moment, or Berlin, or one of those places that's being directly affected by that, then New Zealand was already a very desirable place to live and work, and already a great place to start a business, and offered an incredible lifestyle and livability standards. But right now, with the elimination of COVID-19 in our sights, and our ability to be a safe haven away from the rest of the world, then the desirability is going to go through the roof, right? And so we've got an opportunity to turn around to some of the world's best scientists and research and creatives and entrepreneurs and say, hey, this is a great place to live, and actually we want to restart our economy here. So we're going to crack on with building houses and employing people and creating new communities, and we want to bring in some of the best talent in the world to solve those problems. And I think for real estate, that could actually be a massive upside, and for the investment back into the country, if those conditions are created by the government, then I think we'll be in a really, really strong position moving forward, and New Zealand should take advantage of that right now. Oh, that's awesome. Thanks, Dash. I'm so pleased. It's hard to know with webinars, right? It's really hard to know. It's a one-way conversation, so it's good to hear feedback like that. Raw, you've also asked any new tech you think we should be pursuing, either in our industry or others, that will be the breakout star from this. Yeah, I think that certainly the chatbot thing would be an interesting one to pursue. So I know we've talked about that in the past, but I think the ability to seamlessly interact on Messenger or WhatsApp with your real estate agent at speed and with really, really available information is something that should definitely be considered. I'm not sure how far you already go. I can't really remember exactly how far you already go in terms of viewings, but I know videos are more like bait for you in terms of getting people interested in the property. But we should also be thinking about, okay, if people actually don't want to do a viewing, what's the best way to offer them a virtual tour of the house, as high spec as possible, because I know that that culture will take a while to bounce back, and retailers and everything need to consider that as well. Like if you've got a tight retail space, people aren't going to want to be in there next week anyway, and so you need to, or when they come out of lockdown, so we need to rethink those things anyway in terms of not just following legislation right now and not just following the government's response, but getting ahead of that and actually recognizing what are the impacts of this culturally on people, and how will that play out in terms of business to business interactions. And that goes for every industry, and it goes for real estate as well. Right, I'll just, if there are any other questions, then please flick them through now. I'm happy to address them. If you've joined this webinar but haven't joined the Facebook group, then please have a look for the Shift Happens Facebook group there, because the recording of this will be up there. I will also endeavour to email it out to you as well, so you've got a copy of it, and provide the slides through there. Just a reminder about what we have on offer as well at the moment, so people can go through that. So Shift Happens Facebook group is the first thing we did. It's the most direct and quick way to get through to people, and I like the idea that we're interrupting news and clickbait and stuff at the moment to provide good business content. So I'm going to stick with the Facebook group. In there we'll post everything that we've got available in terms of information and advice. That group will always be free, and we'll keep, as the goalposts keep shifting, we'll keep shifting what we think businesses need. We've also set up a page on our website, which is shifton.co/shifthappens, and on there we are posting transcriptions, resources. So every interview we do gets transcribed, so I'm posting all the transcriptions in there if you prefer to read. We'll post YouTube links to all the interviews we're doing. I'll post a recording of this webinar. As things progress, we're consolidating everything into that one place, so that you've got a really good reference point. And also some of the people that we're interviewing are offering resources around things like continuity plans and all of that. There's also the possibility to reach out to us directly through the website as well and talk about working with you on the strategy. I've got a pretty clear line at the moment that our capacity is very challenged. We're extremely busy, but particularly if a business is really in need of some help at the moment, I've been providing as much free support as possible to the tourism sector and to hospitality and all of those people that are affected on the front line. So if you do need someone to speak to directly, then I'm making myself available. In terms of more strategic stuff, then and more work together, then it's a good time to put an inquiry, but we are pretty tapped capacity wise at the moment. But that's just a reminder of the support that we're making available, and this is the best ways to contact me is through LinkedIn, through Instagram, and of course on our Shift On Facebook page if you haven't already. So look, I think I'll leave it there, and thank you very much for sticking with me and for participating in the webinar. I look forward to hearing everyone's feedback and things that you think could be addressed in the future, or other topics you'd like to hear about. I'm also really keen to do more sort of panel style webinars. So if that's something you're keen to participate in, maybe even some small group sessions where we get together and discuss our own business responses and that kind of thing. I want to keep it as current and dynamic as possible. So if you've got ideas to contribute there and you've got value to add, then please do. And otherwise, I'm going to take Paul Brockie's advice and go and enjoy a cold one. Go and pour a glass of wine, I think. Thanks everyone for your participation again, and look forward to hearing from you all soon.